Hi everybody, my name is Eldad Makuria. I'm from H1 in Seattle, and we're here today for our August Civic Coffee Hour. We're going to have some discussion around social
Your last name is
connectivity.
Ishado.
We have great resources on your left side here, on my left side. There's some snacks in the back, lots of books in the back. Please feel free to grab any after the discussion, during the discussion. So to get it, first I want to take one for Community Senior Center for having us today. We're happy to be here. It's always nice to be back. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Teresa Tam. Teresa Tam is the social health manager at the Greenwood Senior Center, a part of the Finney Neighborhood Association. For over 5 years, she's been raising awareness regarding the negative health impacts of social isolation and social loneliness and developing programs to increase social connection among older adults. She also has over a decade of experience in federal health care programs, evaluation, and is passionate about supporting the health of others as they age. So she's a great person to moderate this conversation for us. So I'll pass it to her to introduce our panelists, and we'll jump right into our discussion.
All right, thank you, Eldad. And yes, thank you, Age Friendly Seattle and the Wallingford Senior Center for having us here today. As Eldad mentioned, my name is Teresa Tam. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk about social connectivity with all of you. As Eldad mentioned, my job at the Senior Center involves trying to raise awareness, educate, reduce social isolation and loneliness amongst older adults in our community. And there are a lot of reasons, underlying reasons for loneliness and social isolation. There are many, many, many risk factors. And this is a big part of my job, is trying to understand those reasons and develop programs and do outreach to help address them and increase social connection. So I'm excited to hear from our two panelists today who are going to talk about two of these challenges, which are cognitive health and hearing loss. So without further ado, I will introduce our two panelists. First, we have Emily Ishado, who is Manager of Program Operations at UW Medicine. Emily Ishado is a geriatric clinical social worker with more than 20 years of experience working with adults across the lifespan in primary care, long-term care, outpatient mental health, and home health settings. Her work has focused on supporting older adults and care partners through the emotional, social, and cognitive challenges that can accompany aging. In addition to her clinical practice, Emily has held research and administrative leadership roles focused on comprehensive dementia care and caregiver well-being. Emily currently serves as a program manager at the University of Washington School of Medicine, where she manages operations for a multi-component program focused on brain health and resilience with the goal of helping people from all communities engage in behaviors that promote lifelong cognitive health and well-being. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you.
And then we have Jacqui Metzger, who is currently a volunteer for the Hearing Loss Association of America. Jacqui Metzger is a retired clinical social worker. She began her clinical training in New York City in the early 80s while attending New York University's Deafness Rehabilitation Program. She worked with deaf and hard of hearing people who sought social and emotional support navigating their lives. She continued her clinical training at the Seattle Psychoanalytic Society and Institute. She developed a course that brought in guest lecturers to talk about working with a diverse caseload, including people with disabilities. Jacqui has had a special interest working with people with hearing loss. She has hearing loss herself, has worn hearing aids most of her life, and most recently received 2 cochlear implants. Hearing loss is a critical challenge for most seniors. Learning to manage communication challenges and getting support from others can help folks stay healthy, connected, and involved in their communities. Service providers also need information, training, and access to technology that allows them to interact more effectively with seniors. Agreed. Welcome, Jacqui.
Thank you.
All right, so let's jump into our questions here. First question is for Emily. Research has shown links between loneliness, isolation, and cognitive health. Can you explain what we know about that relationship?
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's really a pleasure to be able to talk a little bit more about loneliness and social isolation and how it is connected to our brain health as well. So first, I just wanted to kind of mention, what is social isolation and what is loneliness? Sometimes I think, even in my head, I kind of felt like, oh, these are the same things, it just kind of happens, you're socially isolated and you become lonely, or, they're the same type of thing. And they're actually two different constructs, or two different things that are occurring. So social isolation is the more objective, not being connected or engaged with other people. So that's an objective thing that happens where maybe you're mainly at home and you're not engaging with other people socially. And then loneliness is that subjective feeling of where you feel lonely and alone and disconnected from other people. And so these two different constructs, they can occur at the same time. I can be socially isolated and feel lonely, and they also can be very separated, where I can be socially isolated but not really feel so lonely, or I can feel lonely but actually am very much engaged, seeing people all the time, but I'm still feeling disconnected. So first, I just wanted to kind of mention, social isolation and loneliness are two separate constructs. But as they're looking at, the research around social isolation and loneliness, there's always been a long association that it does, contribute to our brain health, or it seems to be connected. But recent research has shown that there is a causal effect that, with social isolation and loneliness does seem to increase cognitive decline or make it more rapid, along with it also increases the risk for dementia or developing dementia symptoms and things. And so one of the things that they are finding with this is that with social isolation and loneliness, we're actually kind of getting more inflammation in our bodies. And more of that cortisol is being released in our bodies. And cortisol is that stress hormone. And so, first, just to say about stress, we all experience stress. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We need stress because stress is activating us to do something. If I never felt stress, maybe I would never pay bills, never get things done on time, never follow up on certain issues. We do need stress. But that chronic stress, if we're not managing it, is constantly basically activating our body. And it might also be really activating that sympathetic nervous system that we have. And so for those who are familiar with the fight or flight response, right? So the sympathetic nervous system is the thing that's telling us, I'm in danger. I need to do something. I either have to fight or have to run away, flight. And so over time, if we're constantly, if we're isolated and lonely and we're constantly feeling, activating this fight or flight response, our body is like constantly trying to help us be safe and secure. And then that becomes too much, and it does end up impacting our brains and the neural tissues in our brains that really help us with thinking and remembering and, following through and judgment and decision making and things. And so that's where we come into how social engagement and social connection really becomes that protective factor to address that. One thing I was thinking about, with this really great question was, with our sympathetic nervous system, if we're feeling in fight or flight, we're ultimately not feeling safe, something is wrong. And it might not necessarily be, they always talk about fight or flight as, back in the days when you're running from lions. And of course, we're no longer trying to, run from lions or have that, response. But we still have that sort of physiological response in us to kind of protect ourselves and keep us safe. But we're not always in a life or death kind of a situation. And so, as this is like, getting built up, and we're feeling more in that state of stress, there also can be that sense of disconnection, which I think comes with that loneliness, not feeling connected. I might hang out with people all the time, but if I don't feel connected to them, if I don't feel, like I have a good, rapport and I'm really engaged, then, still can result in that loneliness. And so that's where, that social engagement can really help feel that sense of connection, with ourselves, with others, and not feeling so alone. And then that ultimately can address the, the cortisol activation and our sympathetic nervous system activation and things. And, in addition to that, with the social engagement, we're ultimately exercising our brain too. We're thinking through the discussion and the conversation, we're kind of problem solving as we go along, and we're really thinking and processing through things. And so that's where the social engagement is really important. So while, social isolation and loneliness can be a risk factor, the good news is there's something we can do about it, and that's social engagement. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Emily. And I know we want to be cognizant of time, so maybe just a short, no, I'm sorry, no, your answer was fine. I was going to say, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. So I want to make sure we have enough time. But you mentioned that causal relationship that does exist between social isolation and loneliness being social determinants of health, which can lead, research shows, to cognitive decline, as Emily mentioned. And you talk about how important social connection is to maintaining brain health, making people feel safe and like they belong, which is what we are trying to do with reducing isolation and loneliness. Can you talk a little bit about the causal direction between having cognitive decline and increasing isolation and loneliness? What has the research shown about that, if you have just anything to say about that?
So one of the things like that, I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but one of the things that's a little bit also a mediator with loneliness is it seems like loneliness can then increase depression, and then depression is also another risk factor for dementia. So I think there's like different trails between how loneliness and social isolation are all kind of interconnected and increasing. But sorry, the other part of your question was?
Yeah, just how declining cognitive health affects your ability to connect.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, yes. As if we're cognitively impaired, that is going to impact how we can connect with other people and engage in the conversation and all of those things too. And so working with people living with dementia or cognitive impairment, it is about building dementia-friendly communities, and so that they can still engage with people living with dementia and understand how to communicate with them, when they're not able to maybe think through or get out all of the words that they need to. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, a question for Jacqui. Can you tell us a little about your hearing loss journey? Has it affected your ability to stay socially connected, and if so, how?
Well, thank you. So I look forward to talking briefly about my journey. But first, I have some questions for you. How many people here have hearing loss? Come on. How many people here have hearing loss? Be honest. Be brave. I want to see. Okay. How many of those of you who have hearing loss, is that a new experience, or is it something that you've had your whole life? How many people, how many of you have had hearing loss your whole life? So those of you who've raised your hands, this is something new for you, this increased hearing. Is that correct? Okay. So I want to be sure that you're understanding me, because I want to connect with you. And if you're not understanding me or any of us as we speak, can you raise your hand and let me know what you need me to do? To talk slower, louder, mess with the mic, put the mic in the right place. Okay, are we good with that? I think it's really hard to let a person know that you're not understanding or hearing them well. It takes some gumption to do that. But I'm asking you to do that here today with us. It's a place to practice this. Okay, so my hearing loss journey started a long time ago. I got my first hearing aid when I was 12 years old. It was always a struggle, though, understanding TV, radio, movies, parties, noisy restaurants, family gatherings, the telephone, school, teachers, the lunchroom, way back in those days. And I imagine for those of you who have hearing loss, these environments still are very challenging. I'm looking at the screen here because the screen is picking up what you're saying, and I'm reading. So I'm reading what I'm saying. And I'm reading what you say when you use the mic. If the audience asks questions, will that show up on the screen? Okay, it's magic. This is technology. It's fabulous. So all these experiences were really uncomfortable, and the question always was how to manage. How to manage communication is always challenging. So I went to college. In one of my classes, I had a history teacher who had a beautiful mustache, but it came down over his upper lip. So I couldn't understand him. And he was reputed at school to be the best history teacher there was. But back in those days, in the early 70s, late 60s, I didn't know that I could go to my history teacher and say, hey, I can't understand you because you have your big mustache. Can you cut it off for me? I mean, that's pretty outrageous. So I didn't, but I had to quit that class. So since then, I've learned a lot about how to talk with people, how to ask people to help me out. And among older folks, and I'm one of you, I just turned 76, so I bet we're all in this together. Hearing loss increases as we get older, and the statistics are amazing. 1/3 of adults aged 65 to 74 have some hearing loss. And 50 to 55% of people 75 and older have hearing loss. And as you get older, those numbers increase. So we're talking about a lot of people who have hearing loss. How many of you know somebody who's hard of hearing? What's the biggest challenge with them?
Getting her to wear her hearing.
Okay, can you raise your hand? Can you raise your hand? Okay, what's the biggest challenge?
Getting her to wear her hearing aid.
Getting her to wear her hearing aid. Oh, you look really frustrated. How many people have had that experience? They know that the person has hearing aids and is not wearing them. Okay, lots of people are raising their hands. So what do you think it is that stops them from wearing her hearing aid?
It's inconvenient.
It's inconvenient. Does she know how inconvenient it is for you that she doesn't wear her hearing aid?
The world's a tough place.
Say it again.
The world is a tough place.
I'm not getting it. Oh, the world is a tough place.
Yeah.
Okay, true. I think many people who have hearing loss don't realize that when they don't do something about their hearing loss, it makes it really hard for other people to talk to them. They just don't realize that. So when spouses or partners or friends put the hearing aids in the drawer, it's really inconvenient for the people to try to communicate with them. Okay, let's see. So I did finish college. I went to graduate school. I taught skiing for many years, which is still a big love of mine. In graduate school, I had oral interpreters, somebody who listened to what was being said and then mouthed what they heard, and I could lip read them. And that made a huge difference in my school. I also learned sign language and had sign language interpreters, which was useful. That was really useful. So I became a psychotherapist. I had a practice for about, 25 or 30 years and retired 5 years ago. So I wore hearing aids until I was 50, and since then I've gotten 2 cochlear implants, one on each side. And the implants are amazing, they're fantastic. But hearing loss never goes away. I'm still dealing with the challenges that come with the territory. And anybody who's hard of hearing, I think would agree with that you're always figuring out how to best be in a situation where you can hear and understand what's going on. So I've had a lot of practice managing hearing loss. I've had to make great changes in my communication behavior. For example, I need to remind people to speak slower. Look at me when they talk, over and over again. I'll say to someone, can you please speak slower? And the person says, sure, I can speak slower. And the story I was telling you was really interesting because, it takes a lot of energy to change communication behavior, both for the hard of hearing person and for the person with whom they're speaking. With hearing loss, it's easy to tune out, not pay attention, but then you miss what's going on. And this is now, we start talking about the lack of connectivity. When you miss what's going on, you become isolated. It's frustrating. You feel embarrassed, struggling to keep up with conversations. It can be depressing. It feels like you're missing out because you are missing out. And over time, this missing out really accumulates, and you find that you really sometimes don't quite know what's going on. And it's easy to feel that no one, thank you, oh thank you, okay, appreciate the feedback. And it's easy to feel that nobody really understands your experience. It's lonely. And we're learning that this lack of connection, as you talked about, this isolation is bad for our health, our cognition, and our physical health. I've learned that joining others who have hearing loss can make this journey a bit easier. You build community. You build community with people with whom you have something in common. And knowing that there are others like you whose struggles are like yours is empowering. I just began about 5 or 6 months ago doing a support group at a community retirement community up north, at North Haven. And we meet once a month. There's a limit to the number of people who are in this support group for people who have hearing loss. So there are 10 residents who attend the meetings. And they're getting to know each other. They may have known each other slightly, but meeting every week, sitting together, talking about some of the challenges that they face being hard of hearing, has really allowed them to come together as a kind of community within their retirement community. So for example, there's a resident council meeting, and somebody is speaking, and when they are there, they can raise their hand and say, hey, can you please use the mic properly? Can you speak louder? We're not understanding you. So it's wonderful to see how these people are coming together, being able to talk about their hearing loss. So I think that's it for now.
Yeah, thank you, Jacqui. Yeah, it just reminds me of a quick anecdote that kind of supports what you're describing, this feeling of isolation when you cannot communicate. I don't know if people are familiar with the sauna boom that's been happening in Seattle. There's a lot of mobile saunas and you can jump in the sound, etc. And I was doing it all winter. And it's dark in the winter, and it's dark inside the sauna, and I have to take my glasses off when I go into the sauna, otherwise it ruins my glasses. And the sauna experience in the Scandinavian tradition is supposed to be very social. You're supposed to be talking to people, interacting, and I was finding myself not talking to people. And I figured out it was because I was missing one of my senses, which is my sight, and how much I rely on reading lips and nonverbal expressions to interact with people. I didn't have that. And so it just made me be quiet and not interact. And so I can only imagine what that's like when you're dealing with that all the time and how that impacts your
Yeah. Another experience might be when you go to a foreign country and you don't speak the language, and people are talking and you don't have a clue as to what's going on. I mean, it's a similar sort of experience of missing out.
Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, a question for Emily. What barriers do you commonly see that prevent older adults from staying socially connected, and can families and communities address them?
Thank you. So, as we age, there's a lot of, as Jacqui was talking about, when there's a loss of some kind, that's really going to impact your ability to engage and connect with other people. But when I was thinking about, just kind of through our aging process, there's one big event that I'm so looking forward to, and at the same time I know it's going to be a big change and loss. Can anyone guess the big milestone event that happens maybe?
It's empty nester.
Oh, that's a good one. Empty nester. That was what I was thinking about. Excellent. You're right. Empty nester. One thing when your kids leave the house. Yeah. Another really big event is also retirement. You know, in the sense of I'm looking forward to it, but I know what a big change, and ultimately it is a loss in and of itself too. You know, you have that routine, you have that group of people that you're going to be interacting and seeing every day, and that's one thing that, you know, changes. And that's a big adjustment. Another one is the empty nesting. The people in your household, you're coordinating stuff for the kids, you know, there's lots of things going on, and then that ends, and maybe some of those social connections go away with it. You know, as you age, you know, talking about the hearing loss or other physical losses that might be happening, you know, that you're not able to access the community as easily. Maybe physically you can't get there, maybe, you know, transportation-wise you're not able to get there, you know, and then also as we age, you know, some people start to pass away, or maybe they also have their own limitations, and so you can't connect in the same way that you used to. And so it's all that sense of, like, you know, throughout the lifespan, how things change and ultimately can be a loss and something that you're then trying to recover, you're grieving, you're sad about, and then how do you address it and create a new routine. And so I like how we're talking about, you know, what can families and communities, you know, do to address them. And so this is one thing. So thank you to Wallingford Senior Center and to Teresa and Jacqui for being here, of really trying to provide those opportunities for people to come and connect. You know, I think it's good to constantly do these focus groups, needs assessments, and really understand what are the other barriers that people are facing in coming to, you know, do some of these social activities. Could it be personal preferences? Could it be the accessibility, or, you know, the capacity to come out and see other people? And so just really understanding what those types of things are. And then when I think about families, you know, I think about how, you know, in the families that I have worked with, you know, sometimes the children are feeling a sense of frustration, and I understand that. You know, they want their parents to do something, you know, different or engage or do all these things, and the parents might be in a routine, or they're not wanting to. And I think it's having that sense of understanding and sensitivity and knowing that it's a process that they're going through. They're going through their own grief, their own losses, their own changes that they're trying to adjust to. And so I think the encouragement is really helpful, you know, with families, going to see them a little bit more often, spending time with them, but doing the same thing of understanding what are their needs, what are their barriers, what's making it tough for them, and maybe working through some of that with them individually. So really just learning how to, what are they valuing ultimately, what's important to them. Maybe it's not going to, you know, the senior center. Okay, that's all right. What is it that would be important and of value to you, and helps bring them connection, and really trying to see it from their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I try to convey in my work on isolation and loneliness is how, because there's a stigma around isolation and loneliness a lot of the time, and how so many of the risk factors are systemic or beyond our control, when people see it as a personal, you know, a personal failing in some way sometimes. So yeah, it's good to know that, you know, to look at what the barriers are, figure out what they are, because chances are they could be things that are external that perhaps we can work on to help the individual. So, all right, let's see here. Jacqui, question for you. Can you tell us about the Hearing Loss Association of America? What kind of support does it offer people living with hearing loss and their families?
Okay. How many of you have heard about the Hearing Loss Association? So really, I have to have the mic right here, like this. Okay. Thanks for the feedback again. See, it takes learning to know how to communicate well, whether it's holding a mic or speaking slowly. So you see it in action. Okay, the Hearing Loss Association of America has been around since 1979. Rocky Stone was the man who pulled it together on the East Coast, he saw the need for hard of hearing people to have a voice, to have some power. And it used to be called the Self-Help for Hard of Hearing People, SHH, which is kind of funny. And about 10, 15 years ago, the name changed to the Hearing Loss Association of America. In Washington State, there's a really active, interesting group of people who work together to offer all kinds of support and services for people with hearing loss. So I have some pamphlets here, HLAA, they're on the table. If you go online to HLAA, and the information is here, you'll find all kinds of information related to people who have hearing loss. Workshops, seminars, webinars. Every month there's something called HOPE, H-O-P-E, hearing other people's experiences. And it's an online group with people from all over who talk about some of the challenges that they have with hearing loss. Anybody can join. HLAA has been instrumental in lots of different kinds of legislation to provide access for people with hearing loss. Captions on TV, captions in movies, this is all part of the work that HLAA does. Also, in my experience with HLA, I'm really just a member. I'm not in the hierarchy of the group, but I have some, what I've learned is I have some printouts here, and this one is communication guidelines for hard of hearing people, and communication guidelines for people who interact with hard of hearing people. And these are really interesting. You might want to take a look, and actually practicing them is really quite challenging for most people. So HLA is an interesting group. There are several areas in Washington where they have monthly meetings. I have some information here, and if you want it, you can get hold of me. Renton, Olympia, Bellingham, they have monthly meetings. And we have a yearly regional meeting where people come together at Town Hall, and there's an all-day presentation. So.
All right, thank you. All right, this next question is for Emily, and this is a question I get a lot from my older adult participants. It's something that I wonder for myself off and on. How can older adults recognize the difference between normal changes in memory and signs that it may be time to talk with a healthcare provider?
Thank you. Yes, very good question, and something that is very confusing to really differentiate. But before I start, I wanted to, say that, if ever there are any concerns about your cognition or your thinking, go and see the doctor. Medicare covers an annual wellness visit, and you can see them, and they'll do cognitive screening. When things come up with our, thinking, and maybe we're having trouble remembering something, or we're feeling more confused, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's dementia. There's a lot of different things that can be going on. It could be an infection, it could be a thyroid issue, it could be depression, it could be, vitamin, deficiencies and other things. And so first thing is, definitely if ever there's a concern, just, talk it through with the doctor so they can do some testing and just, figure out maybe what might be going on. But in regards to, kind of that normal versus abnormal cognitive changes, briefly, the normal is where there's a slower kind of processing, like our processing time just takes a little bit longer, to kind of recall some certain details, or to maybe, something that tip of the tongue, they call it. Like, it's just that tip of the tongue. I know what I want to say, it just isn't coming out yet. But eventually you do remember. And so those are things that are, kind of general normals, that just a slow, processing speed. And just takes a little bit longer to learn, takes a little bit longer to think through things. It could be attention type things too, where, before you can multitask and cook and be on the phone and, send an email all at the same time. But now that multitasking kind of needs to be more one thing at a time that you can really focus on. And maybe sometimes it's more that the ambient distractions, someone can be hammering something, you can get through what you need to, and now it's like, I need quiet, I need to focus, and so sometimes that can happen as well. The mental flexibility, our ability to kind of, figure out if our usual route to a store is now blocked, maybe I just have a little bit of more trouble figuring out, okay, what other street can I go down to still get to the store, and so that sometimes can get a little bit more difficult as well. Our memory, the memory around like what skills I can do, just like cooking or, dressing and all that type of stuff should basically stay intact, but sometimes just the memory of recalling some details about things, sometimes that can certainly happen too. One thing that should also stay and remain pretty stable is that spatial recognition. You should generally know what items are, a paper, a pen, a laptop, and in general you should know where it is in space. So, I can grab the pen here instead of I'm trying to get my hand onto the pen. So those types of things, generally should stay stable. But the abnormal things is when it really starts to impact your daily life and your daily functioning. You really can't track like a conversation. You're forgetting important things that are starting to become problematic, like managing your finances, paying bills on time, really repetitive memory loss and can't, track things. Your judgment and decision making is starting to get really difficult. Maybe you can't locate stuff or recall what things, really are. And so that would be things that you would want to start, talking to the doctor about definitely, or perhaps family members around you might notice these things. Yes, so thank you very much.
I think what you're talking about is familiar to most of us, is it not? Most of us who are a little older. So I really appreciate what you're saying. And I think that's a topic of conversation that we often have. Oh, I can't remember whatever. And knowing what is normal and just comes with the territory and when is it really problematic, that's a big challenge. And again, hearing loss, sometimes if you haven't heard, see, I'm dealing with it too. So sometimes it's really hard to come up with the words to express the idea. And so I'll be with that.
All right, thank you. And now seems as good a time as any to put in a plug for the Greenwood Senior Center's memory loss programming. We have a lot of memory loss programs, not only for individuals living with early stage memory loss, but their caregivers. There's some support groups and various activities. So come meet with us if you feel like you need support in that area. Okay, for Jacqui, for someone who has recently noticed changes in their hearing, what advice would you give them? What are some tools out there that they can use, all the technology?
Well, if you notice your hearing has changed, it's really important to get tested. So you have a baseline. And people often hesitate to do that, but that is one really, really important thing to do, to go to an audiologist and get your hearing tested. Your doctor can recommend a place to go, friends can recommend a place to go, but to get tested and to make sure that there's nothing aside of sort of normal hearing loss going on, so you want to get your hearing tested. And then these tips in terms of learning how to manage this hearing loss are very important. It's free to join the Hearing Loss Association. So you sign up and you'll get the news by email. And that's a really great way of dealing with early onset hearing loss. And in terms of technology, there's so much technology out there. There's this kind of thing where you get captions. Hearing aids are a basic technology. Bluetooth, if you have hearing aids, you can pair the hearing aids with your phone and use the phone, and that is fantastic. You can get caption devices so that the handheld device will listen to what's being said and tell you something like like what I'm having here, but handheld. And again, HLA has a lot of information about those devices. And if do you have any questions about some of this? Anybody have questions? Yes, good.
I watch a lot of foreign films and shows in English. They're made in English or else they're dubbed, and I can't understand a word they're saying. And I turn on the subtitles, and I've never thought about it before, but of course subtitles, and then I understand, I read it, they're saying the English, but I read it and I understand. Do I need to thank HLA? Is that you were saying something about subtitles? Maybe they're the ones I should thank for that.
Yes, HLA has been working very hard to ensure accessibility, communication accessibility. Captions are fabulous. Do most of you use captions on your TV? Most of you use captions on your TV?
English,
Yeah, it's incredible. Sometimes captions are behind, sometimes captions are perfect, but basically they're just a fantastic thing.
Okay, it's the wonderful.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that. Question, yes?
Yeah, how could I learn to lip read?
Talk to your doctor, who can recommend a speech and language person, and you can take lip reading lessons. They call it speech reading now. But yeah, you can practice with somebody who can teach you.
So people who are completely deaf can actually understand what I'm saying just by looking at my mouth or the whole body or what?
Well, it's not so easy. I think we all lip read to a certain extent. I mean, if I cover my face and talk now, it's much harder to understand what I'm saying. It's much harder to understand what I'm saying for some of you. We read people's faces, all of us. Some people are very skilled, and so yeah. So some people are very, very good at it. It depends who's speaking. It depends if they have an accent. It depends on the lighting. It depends if they know the topic. There's so many things that affect a person's ability to speak or lip read. So you're watching me watch them. I assume as you both are talking, I'm watching you. I both hear you, but I'm also putting the sounds with what I see on my lips. I'm putting the sounds with what I see on my lips. I'm kind of learning to keep the mic here, so that's good. Does that answer your question? I would say
I don't know, I have two sons, and one is 55, and I think he's going on the dementia journey. I don't know. I mean, he doesn't live in Seattle. Neither one live in Seattle. The other one's almost 40, and I think he's always been near death, but I never even thought about it. But I mean, I don't know how to even talk to him about it because he doesn't live in Seattle anymore. And I've tried to explain that I have trouble hearing now, and I can't explain that to anybody because nobody can explain why I'm hearing loss.
Have you been to your doctor?
I don't have a doctor.
You don't have a doctor.
No, I mean, that's irrelevant at this point. I mean, it's almost impossible. I'm so low income, it's irrelevant.
I don't think.
All the testing is done for people who want to buy hearing aids, and I can't afford it. I don't need it.
Not true.
Okay.
Not true. I think, again, the most important thing is for you to start with seeing a doctor. So and then you can get your hearing tested.
But that would be an audiologist.
Well, your doctor can decide where you could go and what kind of test you need in the moment. But yes, an audiologist who will test your hearing. And then you have the option of making a decision whether you want to get hearing aids or not, if you qualify for them. And there are all kinds of programs that make hearing aids a lot more affordable than they used to be. Medicare, Medicaid.
I don't have Medicaid, so it's out of the question.
You have Medicaid?
No.
You don't? How come you don't have Medicaid? Or Medicare? You have Medicare?
I have Medicare.
You have Medicare. Okay, good. Well, you can start by getting a doctor. I think that's the first place to start. If anybody has suggestions, let's hear.
She should be aware.
Oh, you will. Okay, yes, just go.
She should be aware that there are telephones that you can buy that have a caption service right on them. So you answer the phone and it will report right on a little screen on the phone what is being said to you.
I don't need that.
Tactile is one of them. And if you take the brochure, the Hearing Loss of America brochure, they will have some information for you that you can discover.
I'm sorry, I have cataracts, so that's out of the question to create a telephone. I don't even have
Maybe we can
to.
talk about this
Thank
afterwards,
you.
the two of you can
Yeah,
chat.
thank you.
A good question.
You're right, though, see the doctor, yes.
Yes. Yeah, and on the tools and resource piece, I actually had two participants at the Greenwood Senior Center who told me they use their iPhone earbuds. They do not have advanced hearing loss. I told this to my dad, and he talked to his doctor, and his doctor said, no, your hearing loss is too advanced. This won't work for you. But for folks who are just having trouble hearing in a room, it helps reduce the ambient noise, which is a lot of times the issue. When you're in a crowded bar or something, you just cannot hear the person in front of you. It kind of helps you zero in. And earbuds, they're less expensive generally than hearing aids, so that's just another resource. Okay, yeah, so we're looking at time. I just have a few more questions here. So if we want to keep our answers brief, and we'll hopefully wrap up in time with questions. Emily, looking ahead, what gives you hope about the future of brain health and healthy aging? Are there new approaches or programs you're excited about?
Thank you so much. Yes, first and foremost, opportunities like this is very exciting. Just the opportunity to talk more about it and really just normalize, all of our situations and challenges that might be happening, so that we just understand, it's something that we might be dealing with, and if loneliness or isolation is one of them, here's some opportunities to learn more. So this is wonderful, number one. And number two, as mentioned, I currently work at the University of Washington School of Medicine in the Department of Neurology, and we have a lot of new, ongoing, exciting research programs that we're doing. There's the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and it's one of 42 across the nation, and they're always doing, a variety of, research studies on new drug medications and non-pharmacological things and other things related to dementia and brain health. And then hello to the Zoom people out there. Krishna, if you're out there, you can put in the link for the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And then the other thing is the program that I'm currently the operations manager for, and that's the Brain Health and Brain Resilience Initiative. And so what we're really trying to understand is, on the opposite end of not, what happens after you start developing dementia symptoms, we really want to understand before any of that happens, what are the factors that are ultimately helping us to stay healthy with our brains as we age? There could be two people who have similar issues or pathology or markers for dementia, and why does one person get dementia symptoms and another person doesn't? What's the difference? Is it our behaviors? Is it our environment, which determines the health? Is it our biology and our markers? And certainly it can be a combination of all of them. But what we're really trying to do is understand what all of these different factors are. And at the same time, for this study, we're also serving as a registry. So we can always take people who want to register and sign up for our study. I have flyers over there for the Brain Health Initiative. And so, if you're not, we can help you get connected to other studies. Research is key to really understanding how can we improve things, how can we have great quality of life, and what is it that we need to do. So we really appreciate people who are wanting to participate. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Jacqui, what are some simple things friends, family, and community members can do to make conversations and gatherings more inclusive for people with hearing loss? You mentioned this tip sheet, if you have your top 3.
I think the first thing is to figure out how to talk to people about your hearing loss. There probably you have friends or family members with whom you feel comfortable. Do they really understand what you're experiencing? Do they know what you need? Can you tell your son or your spouse or your whomever friend that your hearing loss makes it really hard for you to understand certain situations? you need a quiet room, or you need to have good lighting. So let people know what the problem is and what they can do to help you out. And then ask for technology. If you go to a meeting, you can make a request that there are microphones and other technical helps to help you here. And go to movies. Sometimes movies have captions. Occasionally, that's really fun, especially the foreign films.
All right, lots of love for foreign films here today. All right, this is for both of you. What's one small, realistic step anyone can take this week to strengthen their health and their social connections? I'm going to jump in here first and say, put in a plug. So in my role at the Greenwood Senior Center, I offer free 30-minute social health consultations for anyone, if it's for yourself or for a loved one you feel like could benefit from more social connection. My information's on this table over here. And it's just a good way to kind of have a place to start, and then I can hopefully direct people to resources and all of that. So that's my one tip.
Yeah, I think my one tip, I'm going to repeat myself, is to tell people what's going on for you. To talk to one's wife or husband and let them know that wearing a hearing aid is really important. You want to be able to communicate. So I think just letting somebody know what the problem is and how they can help you is just really important. And it's much harder than it sounds. I don't mean to be flippant about this. This is a hard thing to do, but it's really important. People don't understand hearing loss, and we need to convey them that it's not.
Thank you. Great suggestions. And for me, it's similarly, I like that there's the social health assessments, because that's where my brain goes as well. What are the barriers and what are the challenges for you in making social connections and doing these activities? Is it, an environmental or accessibility challenge? Is it a personal thing of feeling kind of shy and not sure how to talk to people? But really trying to understand what is it that is making it hard for you to connect or do social engagement and activities with other people. And then really trying to make a small step forward in that way. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm going to do all these activities every single day and, see these many people and whatnot. Make a small step. Is it just, I'm going to see what resources are available, what activities are out there? Going through the senior centers, area agency on aging, the community living connections, things like that? Or is it going to just be, I'm going to smile at someone on the street randomly and just give them a nice smile for that little bit piece of connection and engagement? So it can just be anything small that you think could be helpful to your journey in social engagement.
Yes, I've definitely seen and read that don't underestimate the small things, the little interactions that you're having with a cashier at Fred Meyer or whatnot. They add up to a lot, and research has shown they're actually very important, even though they seem so small at the time. So, all right, and then
Before we wrap up, we get questions from the crowd. Okay, do they need this? You can repeat the questions.
Okay, it sounds like we have time for 2 questions.
Of course, with like you mentioned, it's the pros for the earbuds from the iPhones, whatever they call that. The pros for this hearing aids. That might work for like her sons are really in that generation, but they haven't been anyways. So it might really help them if they could.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so she was mentioning just the fact that nowadays there are, as Jacqui mentioned too, there are less expensive hearing aids. There are over-the-counter hearing aids, whereas before you needed a prescription, I believe. So again, maybe talk to your doctor about that first to see if that works for you. But it's good to know that there are lower price options. Another question?
Sure.
What do you do about someone who has hearing aids but is profoundly deaf and speaks at such a loud everybody else wants to be in the group? Is there a
Did you-
way to
did you
get them to
understand
moderate
that?
it? You keep telling them to speak softly and it just keeps going way up.
So you're asking about somebody who wears hearing aids but speaks way too loudly, which is really off-putting to most people when they don't want to interact with them.
Painful for everybody else in the room.
Well, that's a tough question. There are difficult people around, and sometimes it's difficult to manage them. But has that person been told quietly, maybe privately, that they're speaking way too loudly and it's uncomfortable for other people? Has anybody been able to get that close?
You can tell that person and she'll moderate and then shortly thereafter it goes back up again. And that's going to isolate her. Like there's a group that doesn't want to invite her, for example, to an event.
So this behavior isolates her, even though she starts out by toning down her voice but then just speaks too loudly. It's a really difficult question. I think she needs a friend who's going to be there, and they have an agreement that when she starts speaking loudly, you make a motion to speak more quietly.
That's the only remedy.
Can anybody else think of something? It's a tough situation. You have an idea?
Well, with children, we teach them to use their indoor voices, and if they're really our friend, we were their friend, maybe we need to help them learn their indoor voices so that they can be with other people. It's going to take more than just, it's like you said, raise your hand. Well,
So
if I
you're
have a
saying-
friend who's really profoundly deaf, I would just go like this, and having worked with them, what that actually means, and not put them on the spot.
Right. And
Because
to
the
do
worst
that,
thing I think you can do is to embarrass them. And the second worst thing, and equally, is to not invite them. And anybody who thinks it's not ever going to be their issue should get a life check, because, I have no hearing loss at all right now. However, I know there will be a day. And I would like to think that we all work, that's part of being in this community, that we work to help each other learn these things, not just quit talking to them.
thank you for that. So use your indoor voice.
Use your indoor voice.
Use have a gesture that's understood for them to be quiet, and have them understand that their loud voice really puts people off. But this can be done privately. You don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Any other words, Eldad, or are we good to go?
We're good to wrap up.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists today.